We have master comic book artist Mark Mckenna, who has drawn and inked some of the most well-known comic book series like X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman, and more. So it's really a pleasure to be able to talk with you. I wanted to start by giving you some congratulations. I saw that you were inducted into the 2012 Inkwell Hall of Fame, and I was reading over that article a little bit, just kind of scanning it. Saw that you mentioned you kind of had your first big break, and when you had that, you didn't want to ink like someone else. You wanted to ink like Mark Mckenna. Can you tell us a little bit of, people that don't know the comic book world so much, what is inking and how does your style differ from your predecessors?
Hey, inking is part of an assembly line of comic creating. Originally it was developed to help make deadlines. So they would have a pencil art, you start off with a writer who would then, give a pencil artist a script and a blank piece, blank board, and these guys would draw the panels that based on if it was a full script or a full plot. Plot basically gives the penciler a little more leeway into creating a page, of layouts versus a full script where the writer actually, it tells you in each panel what he would like to see. And then while the pencil is working on pages, and generally it was somewhere between 22 and 24 pages of art, he would hand the pages over to the editor, who would then hand them over to the inker, and the letterer and the colorist. So there's 5 guys that all have to basically answer to an editor that's up in the offices. So the assembly line kept things moving. If you had one guy working on all the art, you'd have to worry about him going through the pencil process and the ink process, whereas if you had a team work on it, the guy who pencils it could be on page 17, and the guy right behind him inking could be literally right behind him, a page behind him.
Wow.
So, yeah. And as far as styles go, early on, sometimes when I worked on staff at Marvel in the mid-'80s, sometimes they would need to emulate a style, like if it's very specific styles, like a Walt Simonson or a Tom Palmer, guys that were staples in the industry for many years. Either the storytelling was off or missing something, or they needed something corrected. They didn't want the artwork to be an eyesore because of different styles, so they would try to get people to emulate styles. Or if you couldn't get it to finish a deadline, if one of these guys who were very stylistic couldn't finish a deadline, they would try to bring other hands in to help it, but they would try to keep the continuity, visually intact, so, but I never liked to do that. I had to do it sometimes because it's just a means to an end, but, I always felt like I wanted to, I didn't want to emulate somebody. I wanted to be myself. And, it's a tricky part of the business too, because, whatever was hot at the time, a lot of guys kind of flocked to that style and tried to do it. And I made a conscious effort not to be that guy.
Now, is there a particular comic book hero? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. Is there one that stands out that's your favorite, that's really like a joy or your guilty pleasure to illustrate?
Yeah, I'm a cosmic superhero guy. I like the Silver Surfer, the guys who could fly and shoot powers out of their hands. I like Adam Warlock from Marvel. At DC didn't have a lot of that kind of guys, but I liked early on. I liked the Legion of Superheroes, where all these legionnaires came from different planets with different powers, but they only had like one specific power. Somebody like Chameleon Boy or Chameleon Lad could change his colors, or his look to something else, or Colossal Boy just could become a giant. Bouncing Boy turned into a giant ball and could bounce around. But they had one specific power, which was kind of interesting because they could write stories about specific characters. There was a couple guys like Superboy that were the end all. But yeah, but at DC wasn't as many. There was a character at DC I liked called the Creeper, which was kind of Batman-ish. He was a little Spider-Man-y, but the guy who did him was Steve Ditko, who actually drew Spider-Man origin issues. But yeah, I like the cosmic stuff. I like doing outer space scenes, so I think that's where a lot of it came from me.
Cool. Now, how would you describe the comic book industry today? I mean, is it easier or harder for upcoming artists to get discovered?
Yeah, it is harder. It's not easier because now you're working on a full global market. Whereas in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even in the early 90s, there was no digital per se. It was all Federal Express and hand-delivered stuff. And the closer you were to New York, where Marvel and DC Comics were, the more opportunities for you to work. But now, with the digital age, I could take on jobs from some fellow who's penciling a story in Brazil. In fact, that happened to me a couple of years ago. It was Easter, and I got an email. I want to say the day before Easter. I came home Easter, and there was an email or a message from an editor who asked me if I could ink a 2-page spread in a Justice League book on Easter. And I said, well, where's it coming from? They said, Brazil. I said, oh, well, I won't get it till 2 or 3 days later. He goes, no, you'll have it in 5 minutes.
Wow.
Basically, that they were digitally sending me a high resolution file. And the process now is that if you have these flatbed scanner printers, you could print out the artwork in pencil format, what they call a non-repro blue ink. A non-repro blue ink is a mechanical device, basically, so you can see the blue lines and ink over them with black, but visually, digital media doesn't pick it up, so it fades out. So that's what I call it, non-repro blue.
Oh, that's really interesting. Now, you were at Wildcat Comic-Con last year. It was cool. I actually got a chance to chat with you a little bit. What can fans expect to see this year from you? Are there some new projects or anything that you're working on maybe fans will get a sneak peek of?
Yeah, I do. I have a bunch of new things. Last year, I don't know that do you remember when it was last year? Was it June?
It was, it was earlier.
Maybe early summer, midsummer.
It was midsummer, yeah. I think. Yeah.
Well, last October, I did my own, created and wrote my own IP called Combat Jacks. Combat Jacks is a kind of a throwback to the old 50s and 60s sci-fi movies with the rubber-suited monsters, which I was a big fan of growing up. And I wanted to do more of that space kind of stuff, so I did a book about space marines fighting monster jack-o'-lanterns on a newfound planet. And I did it as a throwaway, kind of like just an enjoyable one-shot type of thing. And I spoke to an editor, a publisher, IDW Comics up in Canada, who told me if I was to do this as a 4-issue miniseries, that he would actually collect it as a 100-page trade paperback. So now what I took was essentially a 24-page story, and I'm going to, broaden it into where these monsters come back to Earth, and they infiltrate a pumpkin patch, and I got all this kind of crazy stuff happening. But other than that, I just signed a contract with Dark Horse Comics to do something called EVE Online. I'm not familiar with it is, but it's an online video game, and I believe I'm doing a digital comic for that. That should start in September. And I also had a new book just came out, independent book called The Steam World Chronicles, which is a 48-page thing that was going to be a 3-issue miniseries.
Now, there seems to be a lot more of that going on, kind of getting back to the digital part of all of this, that there's some comics now that really aren't even being printed per se. They're just out on the internet. You grab them digitally and you look at them on your computer. How is that changing some of the industry, where somebody, a guy like yourself for decades who sat down and inked out stuff, how does that change the game for you?
Well, it does, because what's happening is the younger readers are, at least I think this is true, a lot of kids will read stuff online. I need a physical copy in my hand to read stuff. I don't know if it's really good to be reading on the internet, to tell you the truth, as much as these guys do. I can't watch TV on the internet. I can do YouTube videos for a couple of minutes, maybe for background noise. I'll listen to some radio interviews, but I don't read online. But Comixology, which is the biggest for digital downloading comics, I believe they have something like 85% of the digital market. They found it's not just a niche anymore. That a lot of people subscribe to their service, and I'm not quite sure what you get for that. But in fact, Combat Jacks was something I was looking for different avenues to bring awareness to that. And even though I sold the book through hard copy distributor Diamond, which is all what is the catalog that all retailers purchase from, It's a 440-page catalog. I was Trick or Treat Pick of the Month back in October, and I still didn't sell a lot of books because when you're looking at a 400-page catalog in your retailer, you only have so much shelf space, so you have to be very leery about what you order. But Comixology is one. There's another one called Indie Planet, which is a lot more of the independent product out there. But they're also a sister company of something called Kablam. And Kablam is a print-on-demand website. So if somebody with not a lot of money or a small independent or even a person who just wants to do their own book can actually do what they call print-on-demand comics, you can print 50 of your books or 100 of your books or 10,000 of your books. And, of course, the prices change based on the amount. But I do believe that the older guys, I don't know if they took to the digital age of reading comics online, but I know that's becoming more of a force as we move along.
Is there still the demand for like the pencil and ink work? Are those ones that are pushed out digitally still like done by hand then re-uploaded to be dispersed, or is it kind of making room for, I don't know, shortcuts that somebody can just kind of whip through Photoshop or something, and then you've got a comic, and is it kind of diluting the art form a little bit?
Well, what's happened? Well, what's a perfect example of what you're mentioning is a lot of guys will do it digitally first, and some guys will put them on their own websites or some sites that become available. And what they'll do is they'll build up a history of their comics, whether it's 4-panel, daily strips or whatever, and then they'll collect them into a hardcover. So you can have this weekly or even daily product come out, and then at the end of a year or 6 months, or whether you want to do 48 pages, you can now collect that as long as you have high-res files, and then sell those. And those collections tend to be kind of nice to have that, especially if you follow the product.
Mm-hmm. One final question for you, Mark, then I'll let you run. I was looking at your schedule on your website. You travel to a lot of these cons. Why are they important to you? Why do you like going to them so much?
Well, Eric, what it is freelancers work out of their house, so we don't get out a lot. So when you're out there, you get to meet the fans for one, and a lot of times that's where the fun is for me, is meeting fans. They come up with comics that I haven't seen in 25 years, and they're asking for autographs on it, sketching. It's also a way of making money too. A lot of times we'll sell originals at these shows, or lithos or limited edition prints, or we'll do sketch covers. Or, some people ask how much it costs to sign an autograph, but I'm not Mickey Mantle, so we don't charge for autographs, but at least, I don't. I don't know that a lot of guys do. But when you're doing a convention and somebody's paying you to draw something, and then somebody hands you 50 comics to autograph, you have to say to them, I'm in the middle of a paying gig here. Be patient with me. Come back. I'll knock off. Because that 50 comics can take you 10 or 15 minutes away from a paying thing, and you're not getting money for it, but you want to honor them for bringing the books to you, too. So, but for me, conventions are an out because we as freelancers, we are home all the time. And I'm doing less of them, though, because I know you mentioned, I think, 24 or 5 years. I'm actually almost 29 years in the business now.
Wow.
So, I've been doing comics for that long, in conventions for that long. So I don't really like getting on airplanes with all my stuff because God knows, banners get broken, and you've seen those videos where the baggage handlers are unzipping, people's luggage and pulling their cameras out. I can just see that with a $1,000 portfolio. But I can also pack my car great to do the conventions like the Baltimore or the Wildcat Con, which is just a few hours from me. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate doing those shows more.
Well, we look forward to seeing you there. Wildcat Comic Con at Penn College. Make sure you come on out. You'll get a chance to see and meet master comic book artist Mark Mckenna. Mark, thanks for taking your time today.
Thank you, Eric, for having me. I appreciate it.